Welcome to the Advocates Corner. I'm Clark Pena. The statehood of Puerto Rico was discussed again for the sixth time. And someone just arrived from Puerto Rico that has been discussing the statehood, the pros and cons. In a few minutes, we're going to have Brock Pierce, businessman, entrepreneur, and advocate on the Advocates Corner. Don't go away. We're back and we're very excited to have someone that just arrived from Puerto Rico to discuss what happened in Puerto Rico with the statehood vote, the pros and cons. Our friend, 2020 presidential candidate, Mr. Brock Pierce. Brock, welcome to the Advocates Corner once again.
Thank you for having me back. Glad to be here.
You just arrived from Puerto Rico, but before you went to Puerto Rico, you had an event in East Harlem at Ricardo's Steakhouse. Tell us about what happened there. It was so unexpected, but it turned out pretty well as I would see it.
Well, Puerto Rico is filled with very passionate people. Many of those Puerto Ricans here in New York are very passionate, and I love the passion of the Puerto Rican people. And there's a lot of there's three differing views effectively, which is those that are in favor of statehood, those that are in favor of the, call it the status quo, and those that are in favor of independence. And some of those focused on independence showed up to make their opinions heard, and always happy to hear from everyone.
Yes, you did interact with them. You didn't shy away from the crowd. And I think it was a good ending to what I would consider, as a New Yorker, a possibly volatile situation. Great job on that day there, Brock.
Well, everybody's got a voice, and it's important that our voices are heard. And I respect everyone, making the effort to get their point across.
Now, you just came back from Puerto Rico. You were on the ground during this vote. What did you see? How were people acting? Was it peaceful? Tell us all about it.
Well, it was an interesting election. The governor's race was one where no one got a major percentage of the vote. It was split effectively three ways. The mayoral race was very close. They did a recount that just finished up today. Looks like Miguel Romero has won by 5,000 votes, which will settle now the mayor of San Juan and the debates that have been going on there. And so Puerto Rico's election is over, and new government will be taking office on January 2nd. The legislation is under the opposing political party, so there's probably not much to expect in terms of new legislation that will pass. But Puerto Rico is very well positioned for economic development going forward, and there's going to be a lot of federal funding that can be invested in important infrastructure that can really enable Puerto Rico to thrive if the money's used wisely and invested in the necessary upgrading of infrastructure.
As you see it, Brock, the United States election with Trump and Biden, does that have a direct effect on what happened in Puerto Rico as far as the vote?
I'm not sure what the presidential race here in the United States and what impact that had. Clearly, in the later part of the election, Trump did finally offer some substantial financial aid to Puerto Rico, I think hoping to win some of the diaspora vote in Florida. But unclear what impact it ultimately had. I'm not sure it played much of an impact on the election in Puerto Rico itself.
Long-term speaking, you go back to Puerto Rico, what are you going to do to engage the current state in Puerto Rico?
Well, I'm going to continue doing what I do. It's the end of the year, and so we support 56 different charities in Puerto Rico. So the end of the year is principally about giving for me. And so that's my main area of focus. And then looking at, where are the areas in which I can, be of service. Obviously, I have a background in entrepreneurship. And so innovation is a major area of focus, how to support the startup ecosystem and create an environment that allows Puerto Rican entrepreneurs to create businesses, to empower Puerto Ricans, and hopefully encourage some of the very talented Puerto Ricans in Silicon Valley, in New York, to come back down and start businesses, knowing that those opportunities exist. The other things that matter to me right now are the areas of major infrastructure, food security, lowering the cost of energies and energy, and making sure that you're building out renewable sources of energy, solar principally being the main thing of focus, and anything that's going to drive economic development. It looks like there's going to be a lot of job creation coming. The White House and at least the current administration has come down and is looking for major investment in biopharmaceutical and potentially PPE, bringing a lot of those jobs back from the Far East. And so I think Puerto Rico is very well positioned for a lot of major economic development, a lot of job creation, a lot of good things to come. And certainly this time of year, you can't beat the weather.
Absolutely. Are you engaging folks from New York and other parts that you've been traveling to return to Puerto Rico or become involved financially in Puerto Rico to help those that are in the island?
Well, generally speaking, I'm just here to listen. I'm here to learn, and so I love spending time with Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico as well as here in New York and elsewhere in the United States to understand the perspective and where they're coming from. Clearly, one of the main things that Puerto Rico has suffered from, probably more than anything else, is a sustained brain drain of people leaving the island due to a lack of opportunity. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in Puerto Rico, and I think that there's going to be tremendous opportunities going forward. And so for those people that are interested in, call it coming home, I think now's the time to start considering that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, we can talk about Puerto Rico forever, but now that I have you here, I want to be able to touch up on some other issues. Big talk right now is the blockchain voting. What say you to the blockchain voting?
I think that this is one of the biggest issues in the country right now. Clearly, there's been a lot of questions raised about the integrity of the election, and the good news is there is technology that can ensure the integrity of our democratic process. If we can bank from our phones, we should be able to vote from our phones, and technology can do that. Blockchain can make that possible. The same technology behind Bitcoin makes it so there can be no two Bitcoins. You can't have that same Bitcoin in two places. That is what blockchain technology does. It is perfect for elections to ensure that votes can't be duplicated and to make sure that votes can't be manipulated, that it goes into an immutable ledger. And so this is already happening. In this election cycle, in the county of Utah, in Utah County, they've already implemented a form of blockchain-based voting, and the first ballot cast in a general presidential election using blockchain was cast for me. And what was interesting about it is that system went live shortly before the main election. And so for a moment in time, I had more votes than every other candidate combined.
Outstanding.
That being all of one, of course.
Oh, congratulations, congratulations.
Hey, we made history. Either way, that's what matters here, is that we have the technology to ensure the integrity of our election going forward. But more importantly, once we can vote from our mobile phones, it will drive accessibility. It'll increase voter engagement. Historically, only 43% of eligible voters have not been participating in presidential elections. And in our elections for like local city councils, it's more like 80 to 90% are not participating. The future is going to happen to us, or it's going to happen with us, and it's important as Americans that we are participating in the process. And if technology can make that easier, that should cause more of us to participate and hopefully choose a government that can ultimately govern over us and the one that we want.
Well, before we came on camera, Brock, we were talking about the New York City election. You have the majority of the city council members that are term limited out, borough presidents, and so many other races. How do you see that going down in New York City?
Well, I'm here in New York, and I'll continue to be in New York frequently because it's very important. If you care about the well-being of the United States, what matters in New York, it's not just the Big Apple. It's the beating heart of the financial system of the United States. What happens here affects the entire country, and to a lesser extent, the entire world. And so I think the whole world is going to be watching what happens here in the New York elections very closely because it matters so much. And so I'm here to see how I can be of service. And New York obviously is where I had the largest amount of voters that voted for me in what was an exploratory election process. For me, this was an opportunity to learn what it takes to run for president of the United States. And I've completed basic training.
Absolutely. And you were out there. I went to a couple of events. You were out there. You were shaking hands. You were kissing babies. And you were talking to people. And you were engaging them, which was very important. How did that feel to you, even though you said this was your basic training? It looks like you had already gone through basic training and you already hit the ground running.
Well, I mean, I grew up starring in movies, and I've been an entrepreneur and public speaker for a very long time. So the idea of talking and connecting with people and hearing about the things that matter to them and presenting solutions to major problems is, it's what I do. I've just never done it in a political sense. But I think I have a lot of the basic skills required to thrive in a political campaign. But it was great. I was glad to hear from people all over the country, all walks of life, what matters to them, what are the things that they're concerned about, because I care about this country. I care deeply about this country. It's the reason I ran for office in preparation, knowing that we're going to need more people in the future that understand technology, that understand where the world is going, and understand how to navigate the challenging but opportunistic road ahead.
And obviously, Brock, a lot of people felt you, they liked you. That's why they voted for you. So you did very well for the first time out, and I hope to be part of your next campaign as well. But I would be very guilty if I didn't touch up on the record highs in Bitcoins. First of all, educate us about what is Bitcoins and tell us all about how can people become involved and so forth.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is a parallel financial system. The closest thing to compare it to, if you don't know much about it, is think of it as a kind of digital gold. It is an alternative store of value. There's a fixed number of Bitcoin. There will never be more than 21 million of them, and it's actually less because a number of them have been lost and won't be in circulation. And as a result of that, much like gold, if people have concerns about the existing financial system, Bitcoin is one of those alternative asset classes where people are storing and hedging their bets. And if you look at numbers, I mean, it is frightening. 26% of all US dollars ever created were printed or created this year. And so these are the things that people are worried about. This is why the stock market is booming, is people are trying to get out of US dollars, get out of treasuries, get out of bonds, into anything else. And the equity markets have benefited from that. Gold and commodities have benefited from it, and Bitcoin clearly as well, with all-time highs hovering between 19 and 20,000 right now. And keep in mind, it was at $3,000 earlier this year. So incredible returns. It's performed very well. But like all things, if it's something that you're curious about, I recommend buying $10, buying $100. It's not about investing in Bitcoin. It's about investing in your future, which is investing in your own knowing. And through that experience and understanding how this stuff works, you can then make informed decisions for yourself.
Very interesting. I know a lot of people who have reached out and said, how do I get involved? And like you said, what, $10 you can start in your venture?
Yeah, it's ultimately, if you've heard about email and it's 1998, and someone's explaining, wow, you can send messages anywhere in the world instantaneously and you don't have to pay for a stamp or an envelope. That's pretty compelling. Bitcoin is essentially that for money. You have the ability to send this store of value anywhere in the world instantaneously. It's something that is going to be very relevant to our collective future, whether it be Bitcoin or something else. And knowing the future before it happens, having an understanding how these systems work, will ultimately benefit you in the long run.
Well, listen, don't go away, Brock. We're going to take a short break. We're coming right back with some more messaging from Brock Pierce on the other side of the break. We're back with our friend Brock Pierce. He just arrived from Puerto Rico, and we've been discussing a whole bunch of outstanding issues. And we just found out this very interesting bit. Brock Pierce broke a lot of records with his run. Tell us all about it, Brock.
Well, I announced my candidacy for President of the United States on July 4th, an auspicious day for an independent candidate. And again, this was an exploratory run to understand the process. So going forward, I could do it as a serious contender in the future. And what the many challenges that a candidate faces. For one, ballot access. How, as a candidate for president, do you get on the ballot? And it requires petitions. And this is a very challenging thing. Most candidates cannot figure out how to get on all 51 ballots. The Libertarian Party is the only third party that's figured out how to do that. And so we broke a bunch of records. We got on 16 ballots starting on July 4th. In the midst of COVID, when you can't go door to door collecting signatures. For example, in the state of New York, to get on the ballot for president, you need 15,000 signatures. And in April, as COVID was hitting New York harder than anywhere in the world, you'd think that maybe they would reduce the number from 15,000 to maybe 1,500. You'd think they might experiment with electronic signatures. What did they do? They increased the number to 45,000 to ensure that no third party was able to get on the ballot here. They also created a rule that said that any third party that had ballot access, if they nominated a candidate and that candidate didn't get at least 2% of the vote, that their party would be disbanded here in New York. It's a major issue. Our democratic process here in New York is definitely under threat, and something that I think all New Yorkers should be aware of. But just to put into perspective, the system is a bit rigged. To run for president as a Democrat or a Republican, you need 25,000 signatures or petitions. As an independent or third-party candidate, you need over 700,000. I think that summarizes it. In every election cycle, it gets harder and harder. And so by going through this process, I understand what to do and how to do it going forward. Obviously, there's a whole host of other things that go into running for president.
When you collected the petitions, I've collected petitions in the past, you have to have that face-to-face encounters, either going door to door, subway stops. How did you do it? How do you collect these signatures with this COVID situation going on?
Well, essentially the same way, but just very, very carefully. Understanding the PR risks, the liability, all of the things associated with going out and collecting signatures during the midst of COVID, especially as it was earlier in the cycle and we knew less about the virus. So very, very challenging. Fortunately, going forward, it'll all be much easier from here.
Right, because you know the process now.
Know the process, and I'm expecting the next time I run for office and need petitions, there won't be a global pandemic.
I hear you.
and lockdowns making it especially difficult.
Well, I have my clipboard and my pen ready for you, Brock.
Well, I look forward to doing whatever we do together.
Absolutely.
I care deeply about this country, and I will continue to show up to serve in every way I can.
Now, let's discuss a little bit the Independence National Union. Tell us about what's that all about? And they had this really big convention not too long ago.
Yeah, so the INU is a new organization that is a collaboration of people that care about this, call it independent movement in general. They hosted the first ever Independent National Convention, or INC, very similar to the RNC or the DNC. It was an exciting event, especially this year. It was held in Cheyenne, Wyoming. They held presidential debates amongst third parties that were on a number of ballots, people like Howie Hawkins from the Green Party and others. I was glad to be able to participate in two major presidential debates. And so I'm excited about the INU. I'm excited about the fact that there is this Independent National Convention, something that will hopefully bring third-party ideas to the table. And I think it's especially important now. As Americans, I think it's very important that we have more choices than just red and blue. I think it's important to our freedom going forward. And I think it's very possible that we could continue to see the populist movement on the right continue to gain more steam. And we're seeing a lot of power in the progressive left. We might see further polarization in this country, and if that happens, we're going to have to find whatever that moderate area in the middle is, and something new may emerge. And so I'm going to continue to keep an eye on the independent movement. You know, as I said in the election, I'm not running against anyone. I'm running for and with everyone. All the Democratic friends I've known my whole life have always assumed I'm a Democrat. Republicans the same. Because we ultimately we have more in common than we have things that separate us. I think one of the things that America needs to figure out is we're so quick in this cancel culture of what are we against. What's important to ask yourself is, what are you for? What do you stand for? What are your values? What are your principles? Because I think most of us are pretty reasonable, and we don't want to live and let live.
Absolutely. And you know, what's really important also is that a lot of people are discussing 2020. They just want to end it. They want to end 2020 to go away. 2021, it's soon arriving. What's important, in your opinion, Brock, for our country, for our world, for ourselves in 2021?
Yeah, so 2020 has been an especially difficult year. I imagine many people would have skipped this one if they could.
Absolutely.
No one will be taking their DeLoreans to 2020. And so I think people are really excited for this year to be coming to an end. I think expectations for 2021 are quite low as a result of everything that everyone's experienced. And I think what's important is the United States feels like the divided states right now. We've seen families divided. We've seen friendships broken. And I think it's really important that we find a path back to unity, that we have compassion and patience with our fellow Americans. I think that's what matters most right now, is we've got to find a path back to unity. We have to find a way to begin working together again, start to patch up those relationships. Whomever you voted for, you know, that is the beauty of this country, is that we have the right to choose those that govern over us. And when these elections are over, you know, what do we do from that? And hopefully, you know, we recognize and accept that, you know, we don't have to agree on everything, but we still should try and find a way to work together. And so onward and upward from here. I'm very excited about the healing in 2021. And also there's, I mean, a lot of issues we've got. You know, even if COVID were to disappear right now, the ripple effects of this are going to take a long time for us to heal from. There's major mental health issues in this country that are largely unaddressed and not even discussed. The education of our youth, and the fact that there's not been a consistent place for them, you know, small businesses going under left and right. You know, the American dream is where a lot of our hope comes from. It's that idea, this opportunity that you can make something, you can build something for yourself, and so much of that's been under siege, the economy. And so it's going to be important that you know, we begin to get back to work. So make your New Year's resolution. Make sure to wish for that future that you wish for, and may 2021 bring us all the wonderful things and bring us a brighter future. There is light at the end of this tunnel.
Brock, what a great way to end this program. We appreciate you. As a Puerto Riqueño, thank you for what you do for Puerto Rico. I know you live there. Thank you for what you do for New York City. Thank you for what you do for this country. And we look forward to having you back again on the Advocates Corner.
I look forward to it. Thank you again, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy holidays. Happy New Year's. Always reminding you, let's take care of yourself, but more importantly, let's take care of each other. Until next time.